them, and that was important.
I think that goes back to the real stories of people when they can put a face on it, you know, because so often we're talking to people and it becomes kind of abstract to people. They're trying to visualize what it might really be, but when they can see a person or they can see a success or somebody who's really trying, it makes a big difference for us. And so in looking, you mentioned one of the pillars, we're also very interested in financial stability because we think that everybody has a right to an income and talk about a public policy issue. Michael, in your business, you get to deal with a lot of people in our community who are in positions of power. Is it a tough sell to get people to understand all segments and how all the issues fit together?
I don't think so. I think that people are inclined, we're all busy. So if you start with that premise, I think that they want to engage, all of us want to engage, all of us want to serve and to be a part of the community. And I think that's where having a public policy agenda that's been vetted by the United Way becomes so powerful, because then you can put into understandable, digestible boxes and buckets what are the priorities, what are the things that we need to immediately address, and how can I help? And when you make that connection for them and make it easier for them to where you're sensitive to their time and to their resources and maximize their impact, you know, that's when you have the magic, you know, of the United Way. I mean, that's, to me, that's what it's all about.
One of the very tangible takeaways this year has been the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is certainly a public policy issue, and we know that last year in Mecklenburg County alone, we left $9 million on the table, and all of our partners are, I think, on board with making sure that those people who are entitled know that there is this benefit that they are entitled if they only know how to access it, which I think is a big portion of what public policy does. And Patrick, I hope specifically in your case, you're feeling like you've got some successes in getting people to take advantage of that benefit.
Well, we do. As a matter of fact, this weekend, Saturday, beginning at 9 o'clock, some of our partners, such as Community Link, United Way, will actually be at the Urban League with tax preparation, but one of the focuses will be on the Earned Income Tax Credit. And that's one way that we get to those individuals. And so that really has to be a community-wide effort, because the differences between individuals getting that earned income tax and actually being evicted or not being able to pay for certain health issues is actually real.
Yeah. Do you think they get it when you put it out there? Is it a tough sell?
It's a tough sell to the individuals because they are dealing in an emergency mode constantly.
They can't think about it.
And it's very hard to think further down the line when you're in that position. And that's why really financial stability is so important, because it's really about getting you to think a little further ahead. And when you can think further ahead and stop and not be in such an emergency mode, then it does allow you to do that. And we as human beings can understand that. You know, when we're rushing, we forget the keys. Yeah. We forget this, we forget that.
I think so many of us, because our lives pretty much aren't like that, maybe one of the most important things we can do is to keep that on the hearts and minds of people, because, you know, then there are people who get frustrated that say, well, I offered you the opportunity and you didn't do it, or I offered you this and you didn't take it, and then people feel like, why should we do it? But I think you've hit on something that's very significant. We don't tend to think like that. We think if we gave it to you, you can do it. We don't think that you're all tied up in the lower Maslow's needs, which is in large measure what a lot of this is, before you can get to the next.
It seems like so much of what we're trying to accomplish there is enabling independence. And, you know, you got to have some blocks that are put together to be able to achieve that. And think of how many blocks you have to put together before you're ready to go file taxes.
And we're not thinking about the blocks.
No, we're not thinking about the blocks, and the reason is because when we live in our own communities, we're surrounded by our own friends and contacts. If we're not living in that reality, it's very hard for us to understand it. And when that becomes difficult for us to understand, then it becomes easier for us actually to pass judgment based on our own criteria and thoughts.
And so you can imagine how advocacy, the power of advocacy, of sharing that experience, you know, if those of us who have stable jobs and access to primary health care physicians, so that we don't have to think ahead. We can call a physician and say, I'm feeling ill and I need an appointment, not show up at the emergency room when I'm deathly ill. If we struggle with understanding that paradigm, you can imagine an elected official who's looking at a piece of legislation that is words on a page at that point. To me, that's where the advocacy, that's the role of United Way and the advocates that are part of United Way, is to make sure that those words on that paper, that piece of legislation, gets translated into human lives and the blocks and, quite frankly, the balls that get rolled under people, so that legislators and elected officials and policymakers understand that these are real people in real-life situations.
And we have to understand that as the providers. And one of the things that United Way is going to help us do is in May 21st and 22nd, in collaboration with the North Carolina State and North Carolina, I believe the Coalition for Non-for-Profits, will actually have a advocacy training over 2 days for organizations such as the Urban League and the other United Way participants to actually look at advocacy in the many different ways that we can apply it. And one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of organizations is that there's not the patience to actually do things for the long haul. And when you talk about public policy, you're talking about developing relationships, and you're talking about long-term projects that sometimes can't be done by simply sending a letter and saying, hey, I want this to happen.
Right. I think that that's part of what the struggle is in Health and Human Services, because we really need to be advocating on a prevention side, and it's so often to see the results of the work that goes into prevention, because there's so much mining and growing and that we have to do to have a result that you might not see for 10 years and 15 years. And I always say, you know, we have attention deficit. We want to see it tomorrow, otherwise it's hard for us to stay involved. We are organizations, all of us, that encourage people to participate in government and in public policy and registering to vote and getting out and performing your civic duty is also part of what we would all like that message to be. And as we close today, I want to say thank you to Michael and to Martha and to Patrick. Thank you for joining me today. It's obvious that your time and commitment to United Way are greatly appreciated, and we certainly couldn't do the work that we do without you. And to our audience, thank you for supporting the United Way, and remember, we are all responsible for helping to make our region a place for all to live and thrive. And please don't forget to contact 211, the United Way's information and referral line, to find out how you can continue to make a difference through volunteering, advocating, and giving. Thank you for tuning in. I am Gloria Pace King, and I will see you next time.